It's a miserable morning out there. When I say miserable morning, I mean it's wet and cold and windy. But what do we expect from our wonderful British Isles? Overcast all the time. Alhamdulillah, by the ni'mah of Allah, we're alive. I think that's the most important thing. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry, I got to do a rant in the morning. Go for it.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everybody. This is the Barefoot Institute. Ajmal Masroor and myself, Henrietta Sawati. On this indeed horrible looking grey British weather, but that's usually what we experience around this time of the year. So today we have a very interesting topic. It's trust, and we realized that we haven't actually done this topic in detail, so we thought it would be a great idea to have a conversation with all of you who are, some of you probably are still in bed having coffee or breakfast or running around after children if they wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So let us know what your challenges are when it comes to trust, because we believe that this is one of the most important conversations we should have when it comes to relationship. How do we rebuild trust if it's lost? How do we develop trust if it was never there? What do we do when we can't trust our spouse particularly, or other people? So we are talking about trust.
We need to get Ibrahim to up our camera a bit. Ibrahim, could you come and up our camera? Because when we sit back, we sink into our sofa and we disappear. So give our head space a little bit less, down a bit, if you don't mind. The camera down a bit more. A lot more. I'm just, there you go. Thank you very much, my wonderful son.
Thank you.
Our beloved son, who is the production person. You can sit back, Anna. There you go.
Wonderful. Oh, so much more comfortable.
I know, that's it.
We had a busy weekend, didn't we?
Alhamdulillah. Very busy weekend. Apparently, I turned 55.
Well, 50.
50, alhamdulillah. And my good wife put in a fantastic celebration of many of my amazing friends. They came together, and we ate. We met one another, we chit-chatted, we listened to some performances, and then we went home.
It was lovely. It was a really nice evening.
So thank you for that.
Very welcome.
For those of you who missed it, well, obviously it was an open invitation for my Facebook friends. Really sorry. I've got an idea. If you want to join in, you still can, right?
For celebration?
Yeah, celebrating my 50th birthday. You can. Just wish me all the best. Make dua for me.
For the next 1 year before you turn 51.
No, for the rest of our lives, inshallah. You can make dua. That's the most important thing you can do, inshallah. And of course, if you want to send me gifts, I always welcome gifts.
You're very humble.
Might as well accept
I like
it.
how my husband loves asking for things.
You know, there is a wonderful saying that one old lady told me. She said, the only thing you get in life without asking is a contagious disease.
Okay.
For everything else, you have to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get, ladies and gentlemen. So therefore, I believe in asking. Anyway, let's talk about trust today.
Let's talk about trust.
Rasmin is already awake. Assalamu alaikum to both of you. Thank you, Rasmin. What about the rest of you? I think on a Sunday morning, when the clock has just gone back, after having gained 1 hour, they're still in bed. They're probably still thinking, it's still 1 hour to go. Some of us do all sorts of weird things. But anyway.
Now, with all the smartphones, you will know what the time is. So, and please do share the video with others if you think it's useful for other people to participate in the conversation that we are having. So let's go for the trust topic.
Discussion. What is trust? How does trust develop? Where does it come from? How do we nurture it? What do we have to do to make our trusting relationship work? I often say to people, trust is a byproduct of a number of aspects in your relationship. Trust is not something that just lands from the heavens fully formed on your lap. Never. Trust is not the aim or the goal either. Trust is a byproduct. So what are the building blocks, the key components for trust to emerge in your relationship? That's what we're talking about. What do you think? What makes your relationship trusting? What makes you trust your spouse? That's what we need to ask you. Ask yourself this question, and we can expand on that. So I say trust is an outcome and a manifestation of a sound relationship. What do you say?
I believe trust is a end process. Well, it's a process by which you not only become comfortable in the relationship, but you become very comfortable in your own self.
Okay.
So it's a reciprocal manifestation of respect and hard work that goes.
Trust in your own self or trust in people? Which one are you talking about?
In a relationship context, it's trusted within myself and trust in the relationship as well as trust in my spouse. Because I think that's where we get it wrong, is that trusting in a relationship, I think it's very different than trusting in your spouse and trusting in yourself. So there are components, and trusting in a relationship is another, it's a different way of building the relationship. I can trust you, but I may not be able to trust the relationship because of other factors, or I might trust the relationship but I can't trust you, or you cannot trust me because we do certain things within our own context that is not adding to helping us build trust.
Ghulam Yahya Shiblu says Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. Jana Holt says Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Nice both to both of you. Nice to see you and very good morning. Very good morning to you too. And Ghulam Yahya Shiblu says, how are you both? We're good. And he says, Jazakallahu khairan for the nice program. Thank you for joining us already in the morning, first thing in the morning, I understand. So the question is, what is trust? What is trust? Trust has two manifestations. One is being authentic and true to your relationship, and the other is being able to rely, depend, and accept the other person's words, actions, behavior in every way possible implicitly. So I trust my wife with the integrity of my honor, with the protection of my honor. I trust my wife with my wealth and property. I trust my wife with the children that we have. I trust my wife with my secrets. I trust my wife with my life. I trust my wife with every aspect of my being. That's called trust, right? Or my wife does the same in return. Do you have a relationship like that? That you can trust your husband or your wife implicitly with your wealth, with your honor, with your children, with your family, with your friends, and even with your secrets?
I think there is something very important about trust that we often forget. You know, when people say that I don't trust you, it's very easily thrown around, this sentence, oh, I don't trust you. But what does it actually mean that I don't trust a person? And I think for me, the key component out of all of this is that there is a timeliness added to it. Trust over time that people you build with me over and over and over again by making an effort. It's not just one thing, because I can easily say I can trust you with my money, for example. But if you do other things that over time seems to be happening and not actually helping me to build a trust, I can't trust implicitly, because what we are trusting is that the person is building it over time, and over again you will have the manifestation. Just like, you remember once we had a really big argument with somebody who said to me that I lie, and I lied to her many years ago.
I can't remember, but carry on.
So this person accused me that I lied to her, and you said, I had been married to my wife about 13 years by that time. I think it was around 13 years. And I've never seen my wife lying. I've never known my wife as a liar. So it's very difficult for you to believe that I would have lied to that person. Trust is like this. If you keep proving that you are trustworthy, just think of the Prophet ﷺ example. He was trustworthy before he became a prophet.
No, from very childhood.
From the childhood, it was built up. It was part of his character. So trust isn't something, and of course we betray trust, but if you don't repair it, then you lose that capacity to trust.
That's right. We've got a few points that have been made by a few people. Abdul Wahid Jabed says, Assalamu alaikum. Jana Hall says, wish you well, Brother Ajmal. May Allah bless you and grant you good health, wealth, family. Alhamdulillah. I mean, thank you, my dear sister. May Allah preserve all goodness in your life and your family. MashaAllah, Ibrahim is a good son. May Allah make good in his parents. Ameen. Naj Akhtar says, Assalamu alaikum, brother and sister. Nice to see you both. Rajan Ali says, audio is little quiet. Why is audio little quiet? Let's look at our audio today. No, audio should be quite loud. If you can't hear us, then you may want to increase the volume on your end. Razmin, I don't trust anyone anymore because it's been broken so many times. I am married to a compulsive liar. Oh my God. I am married to a compulsive liar. That's a massive thing to say, Razmin. If you are saying that in public domain, that in itself is a problem. Because if you have a marital dispute with your spouse, you should be having that dispute privately or via a marital counseling space or a trustworthy confidential space where you can be both empowered to feel free to explain, express, and share your thoughts and feelings openly, instead of talking about it in this public domain, saying you are married to a compulsive lie. It doesn't give him any chance to defend himself, and it doesn't give you that integrity and sanctity of a space where you can talk freely. So be very careful. Part of breaking trust is part of preserving trust is to not to break trust, like just we've seen the example of. And I don't mean to be telling you off. Jana Hafez, please remember me in your dua. I'm not feeling very well. Mukhtar Ahmad says, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, Ajmal Bhai and Bhabi. A very useful program, and today's topic is a deep key subject to married couple loving, love watching or loving to watch. Thank you. Very good. So I want to expand on that point that Razmin has just said. If you do something wrong to me, Hannah, if I am aggrieved by my wife's behavior, if I then go and broadcast her behavior in public, whether to my siblings, whether to her parents or her brothers and sisters, or my parents, or my relatives, or my friends, I've already broken the trust. What trust have I broken by doing that? I have breached the confidentiality of my relationship. It's not easy to maintain confidentiality of your relationship, because once breached, it's very difficult to repair. When you start deriding your wife or your husband, mocking them, talking bad about them behind their back, you've already broken the trust. What should you do under such circumstances? What should people do when they are struggling in such a situation?
Well, first, I'm always curious what drives people to, and we've seen this in the media as well. We have seen celebrity couples doing, throwing all sorts of things at each other in public. I'm always curious what drives people to do that. Maybe they have reached a point of pain that they can't contain this anymore, and maybe they have been trying for a very long time to resolve the problem, but it didn't quite go anywhere. So their last result, they feel, is that I have to put it out in public, so maybe I get some support or some help. Or maybe they have had so many trials of the challenge itself to fix the trust, and it's not going anywhere, that they feel like there's no other resource.
But either way.
No, but let's just understand it. So the first question is always, what makes you go public with a very strong statement, and the second thing is, how would you feel if someone said the same thing about you in public, whatever the relationship is? I think it's a really important point to reflect on. Would I do something that I wouldn't like to receive myself?
Yeah.
So it's an important just for reflecting on for all of us.
So backbiting is a massive problem. But let's go to backbiting in a minute. You gave a great example of our Prophet ﷺ. You said he was
trustworthy. One of his names was Al-Amin.
Al-Amin.
From very early on. So by the time he became
And As-Sadiq.
The truthful.
Yeah, so he was Al-Amin, the one who can be trusted with everything, and As-Sadiq, the one who is always truthful. Now these two very unique characteristics actually forms the basis of your trusting relationship. That's why I said, can you trust your spouse with everything? And is your spouse truthful with everything? Transparency in a relationship does not require me to confess my sins to my wife. Remember that. Transparency does not equate me or my wife confessing our sins to one another, especially the sins that don't impact the other person. If I've sinned, I ask Allah for forgiveness. That's not what I mean by transparency. Transparency is to not withhold information from your spouse deliberately in order to keep control or hide things that impact them. An example, we are together looking to buy a house and we're saving money in an account. And I take out £10,000 without telling her, and I give that money to somebody in need somewhere else. That's called breach of trust, because we're together saving money and you are together on a journey. If you take out the money without having consulted or received consent from your partner because you're doing it jointly, that's a breach of trust. On the other hand, I have been working extra hours or doing extra businesses without impacting my relationship, and I've made a bit of money, and I choose to give that in donation to somebody else without telling my wife. That's not a problem, because it's not impacting my agreed contract with my wife, which is that we're going to together buy a house, we're going to go together on a holiday, we're going to buy a car, we're going to do this together. Can you see? It's very important to be transparent. I'm going out. If there is an explicit understanding between the two of you that you can go out anytime you like, it's not a problem because you trust one another, that's one thing. But you go out to an unusual place and you withhold that information from your wife or your husband deliberately in order for you to either hide what you're doing, because if you are caught you will be embarrassed, or exercise control over them. That's breach. That's what breaks trust. Does that make sense?
It does. But what I'm thinking is that, just getting back to the example of the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself, is that I think for me the real example in his life story is that by the time he became a prophet, there was no question that people will not want to listen to him. For whatever reason, we are called by certain things, and he was called for the greatest thing in life. Trust was part of his characteristics, not because he was a prophet, but as a result of this, he became the prophet.
It is a prerequisite. All the prophets, prerequisite for their becoming the prophet is that they must have sound character. People must accept them, trust them, believe them, and have no question about their characteristics.
And I think when you look at it in terms of psychology, is by the time people come to the realization in relationship that I can't trust my husband or I can't trust my wife, by that time a lot of water has flown through the rivers.
The bridge has passed.
And there was a lot of little bits of information that the spouses didn't catch at a time that they could have.
That's right.
So I know a lot of people who, after many, many years of marriage, they realize that, oops, I just realized my husband has been cheating. He has got, financial issues. This is what he's doing behind my back, or she's doing whatever behind my back. And all these little things go under the cover. They go under the carpet. Oh, it's not a big deal. I just let it go this time. But we let go of these little things. We are building mistrust instead of focusing on building trust.
Correct.
How do I inspire my spouse not to lie, not to cheat, instead of just let it go for the sake of happiness, for the sake of the peace? I'm not saying anything. We keep pushing things under the carpet.
There's a part that you may have just missed, which is that you did mention but didn't expand, which is that how do I enable my spouse to not lie? How do I empower my spouse to not have to cheat? The best way is to have that clear communication. So if my wife knows that for her to go and see her mother, or for her to speak, I have a client like that, for her to go and see her parents, she has to lie to her husband because he would not accept it. Why do you as a husband create such a toxic environment where your wife has to lie to see her mother? It's a human right to see her parents. It's Allah given right to have that relationship with her parents and her family. Even if her parents are insane, even if they are loony, if they are barking mad, she still must maintain a relationship with her parents. You can't cut off the relationship with the parents. So if as a wife or a husband, you make such a toxic environment that one of the spouses has to lie to go and see their own parents, which is their basic right, you are responsible for creating such a mistrusting relationship.
I'll give you another example, which is very similar to this. There are people who struggle with gambling.
Yes.
It's a big deal. Any kind of addiction is a big deal in our family space. There are wives and husbands, and it goes for both genders. I don't want to make it specific. They enable the behavior by not addressing the issue. They cover it up against their own parents, and they don't talk about this within the family context or in a counseling context. They enable a behavior that is just getting more and more out of hand.
Because they're not addressing the issue.
Yes, because if someone is addicted to something, whatever that is, whether it's work or pornography or anything that is any addiction, if you're not addressing the root of the addiction, it grows over time.
It could also be food, Hannah. So you see your spouse constantly binge eating. This is important. Or having something like a lot of dessert constant, and you can see them ballooning, becoming bigger and bigger by the day, and you don't address anything because you love them. Oh, my husband has become so nice and cuddly, or my wife is becoming so cute and big and fat. All of those subconscious thoughts of niceness that you're thinking, you're actually pushing them and allowing them to go into a state of bad health, for which you will be also paying a huge price. We call that kind of a space enabling bad behavior, enabling addiction, enabling creation of a toxic environment. and that is breach of trust. The reason why we have got married and be able to see one another in that space which is private and intimate is so that we could be a mirror to one another like nobody else can be. And part of that trust is for my wife to tell me truly and honestly, a good feedback. Actually, my dear husband, there is a massive hair sticking out of your nose. Maybe you want to take it out. Because before I go to public, it's better my wife says that to me than public. Or your breath is smelling. Go and freshen up a bit before you go out to public domain and give speeches. I do that all the time. When I'm giving out, if my breath is stinking and I'm causing trouble, I would have a trusting wife who I trust and she trusts me. I'd rather get feedback from her and not react to it because she is my spouse. Can you see how relationship, from the smallest brick that you lay down as a foundation for your relationship to the biggest, the macro vision of your marriage, everything is interlinked to the concept of that trust that you build and trusting relationship that you have and the truthfulness and authenticity that you adhere to.
And by the time what I'm thinking is, by the time someone gets to that point of, I don't trust my husband, I don't trust my wife, look at the construction of how mistrust came into being. How did it come about? Is there is one bit of information, another bit of information. You can actually follow the journey of how you lost trust. I don't think anybody gets married with the intention of, oh, I want to be a mistrusting or distrusting person, or I'm getting married to someone who I can't trust. No, everyone wants, and the intention is that we want to get married to somebody who we can trust and they can trust us. That's always a good intention. This is how we start off. But what we do is slowly, we just keep dropping the important bits of information that leads us to a point of, oh, now I look at my husband or wife, and for years and years of mistrust, I can't trust anymore. And people really have to go back to where they started off and say, where were the points where I lost the capacity to enabling my spouse to tell the truth, even if it's difficult, even if it's hard to say, look, I broke your trust. I did something that I shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
But if you don't talk about these things, they just grow out of proportion.
It just shows that the relationship is not really connected and you're not really being honest to yourself and to your spouse. Reese B says, salam from Twin Mummy. Much needed topic. Thankful for your sessions. Very grateful. Thank you very much for your candid transparency. Haq said, some people may feel offended if a spouse points out that there's a partner is letting go and gaining weight. Just a thought, yes, but why would you get offended by your partner who you love so much, who sees you in your clothes and naked, who sees you in your goodness and your ugliness, who sees you in your good health and worst health, who sees you every day, every morning? Why would you get offended if your partner says to you, actually, darling, you're gaining weight and this is not good for you, let's do something about it? Why would you get offended? You would only get offended because you don't have sufficient confidence in yourself. I get that. You don't trust in what you're hearing, and you don't trust your husband or your wife's judgment on you. That's why.
But there's a great point that Haq is raising here, is that in our most vulnerable state, how do we communicate? And I think people, what they do is, when people feel that, oh, there's a possibility for vulnerability, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to go there. So we retreat and we rather not have an honest conversation. But I think vulnerability is the possibility for you to build more trust, because then it helps you to feel more comfortable to speak about your faults. And I think really trust is about, my understanding of trust is that when you are really comfortable talking about your own faults, then you really know that you can trust another person, because they will not reject you, deject you, they will not ridicule you, they will not make a mockery out of, where you are vulnerable. However, when your vulnerability is exposed, that's where you're breaking trust.
When you look at the dictionary meaning of trust, trust is a noun, it says, and it's a firm belief in the stability, truth, or ability to someone or something.
I think trust is a verb.
Of course, and it's coming. The first is a noun, and the second is verb. It's a belief in reliability, truth, and ability of. I have trust in. I should never have trusted him or her. Verb again. These different definitions of trust. Ultimately, it boils down to that those small building blocks, bricks that you lay underneath your relationship. In a marital context, without trust, how could you become intimate with somebody? If I thought my wife would be critical of my body, I won't be able to come next to her. If I thought my wife would be mistrusting of my personality, I would not be able to form a relationship, emotional one or physical one. If I thought my wife will break my trust and broadcast to the world my weaknesses that she sees, my unfitness that she sees, all the sins and the wrongs that she comes to know about my deeper, darker personality, I will never be able to connect with a human being like that. I would not open my door, my heart to a person who I can't trust. Can you? So the question to you all is, do you trust your spouse? Do you trust your spouse? Now, don't answer that directly here, especially if they can be recognized. However, if you're together as husband and wife, ask that question to each other. Do we really trust one another? Do we trust one another? I trust you with everything, and I say that in public. I trust you with my secrets. I trust you with my wealth, my children, my family. I trust you with everything. There is nothing in my life that I don't trust you with.
Alhamdulillah.
That's the honest truth, and Allah is my witness.
I feel the same. I don't think I have anything that I won't be able to tell you, because I know that you will be able to hold it. And for me, the reason why I think trust is just like love. You know, love is a noun. Everybody is concentrating around the noun aspect of it. Oh, I'm looking for love. I'm dying for love. I'm chasing love. Whereas love, when you put it in action, there are so many things we need to do. Trust is the same. Trust is what we all want, but for trust, we need to take steps. We need to actually really self-reflect. We need to reflect on the other person. This is why, you know, in Islam, the consideration of a potential partner is not something you do willy-nilly. It's not something you just say, oh, he looks like a nice person, or she looks like amazing, and we're going to build an amazing life. You have to go to the person's relatives. You have to go to see friends. You have to ask them questions about, what do you know about this person? And from that conversation, you need to be able to deduct how trustworthy that person is.
Yeah.
Because trustworthiness is a characteristic. It's not something people do on a good day. It's not something people put on as a coat and then they wear it when they feel like it. Trust must be in every fiber of your character.
That's right.
If people don't see that, then surely they can't trust you.
There are some signs of lacking of trust or lack of trust in a relationship. Let me share them with you. You may not have trust in your partner if you feel like you can't let your guard down in front of your partner. You may not trust your partner if you feel like you can't let your guard down. What do I mean by that? If you can't let your guard down in front of your partner, in other words, if you can't be vulnerable in front of your partner, then there is a massive problem with trust. If you can't share your weaknesses with your partner, I'm feeling down today. I had a miserable day at work. My boss told me off. I got a sack. I know brothers and sisters, they get sacked from their job. They come home and pretend everything is okay. I've had a client like this who left every morning at 8 o'clock to go to work, went out to town, sat in libraries, went in cafes, cries his or her eyes out for hours and hours, actually days on end, did not tell the spouse that I've lost my job, because firstly, they just felt humiliated. They did not have the trust to be able to stand up and say that. But they were also extremely scared of the repercussion this will have on their relationship. This went on for 6 months. The person did not tell their spouse that person has lost the job, went out every morning and endured the pain of just walking around the city, walking around sitting in the library, just waiting in pain and suffering in pain. That's a serious problem if you can't be vulnerable with your spouse, number one. Number two, if you feel like it's best to take control and do everything yourself.
I think control is a huge thing in a relationship when it comes to trust, because I think the more controlling you become, the least opportunity you give to a person to build trust.
So if you think I can't, if I thought you can't do basic things in life and I took over, if you thought I can't do basic things in life and you took over, one good example is while you're driving. Good example. If you're driving and if your spouse is sitting next to you, do they bark instructions at you? If they do, there is a problem. Your spouse is not trusting you with your driving. Why not? Oh, I don't know. I can't let go. Well, that's your problem. Don't destroy your wife's or your husband's confidence. I can tell you, and I'm pretty certain that you will confirm this, Hannah. I have been watching you drive for a long time. Very rarely do I intervene when you're driving.
Mm.
Do you know why? Because I know consciously I would hate that if somebody did that to me.
Mm.
I would literally go mad if somebody was telling me what somebody was telling me what to do when I'm driving. So if you have to take control and do everything yourself, there is a problem that you don't trust your spouse. That's number two. Sign number 2.
Mm-hmm.
So sign number 1 is you can't let your guard down, or you can't be vulnerable in front of your spouse. Secondly, you take control of everything. That indicates that you don't trust your spouse. Sign number 3, you secretly watch their social media activities or anything else that they do on social media. You secretly watch because you're worried that your spouse is doing something dodgy on the social media. Now, there are two things to think about. One is that your spouse may actually be doing something dodgy on the social media, and they may be hiding that. So therefore, you are already feeling vulnerable, already feeling on the edge, nervous, etc., etc. But the other is that you personally don't trust anyone, and you have to sneak into their social media account to see what they're doing.
Forget about social media and the people checking each other's phones
Constantly going through messages,
or
telephone
just
numbers.
peeping over the phone. Oh, who is messaging? What's going on? There is something fundamentally wrong with that.
I never have that inclination. I've never ever looked at your phone.
Okay.
Never ever. I don't know why. Is it my characteristics in that way? I do not look at your phone. I will only read something that comes to my attention in my domain. I will not go to your domain. You have got a diary that you keep, and you've been keeping it for 20 years now. It lies around in our bedroom. To this day, Allah is my witness, I have not even read one single word in your diary.
Well, you will have to publish when I die, so
I understand
you will
that.
read all of those
I'm
things.
saying I don't.
No, but
because I trust you.
Yes, but I think we have to be very careful with young couples or people who have the experience of being, broken trust in their relationship, because I think it's only very human and it's very natural that if someone's trust has been broken badly, and we are talking about, we could be talking about something very simple, that you don't hold yourself accountable for the words that you say and you are not in integrity, but it could be that you have been cheated on. It could be so many other things. You have been taken money away from.
Yeah.
So
it could have happened. It could have happened.
Yes, but we just have to be very I think aware that it's very human that the first reaction we have is that I want to know what's going on. I want to know why it happened. And of course, our brain is looking for evidence for all of that we are feeling like, I really want to know why my husband or wife came to this point that they have to do something behind my back.
But by discovering all the things that has gone on, you're not going to be able to address the problem that there is. Why it has happened, it has nothing to do with all the media or the social media interactions this person has had. Take it from me, it is nothing to do with that. It's to do with the fact that your relationship from the day one may have encountered connection problem, or this person may have carried baggages from the past that they have got into and they can't break away. For example, habit of pornography. If the person has been addicted to pornography from before, it's very likely that they will continue in a marriage even after you've been married to this person. This is a problem, but this does not give you the license to sneak, peek, or secretly monitor your spouse's phone or social media activities. There is a person who has just written here, which is quite interesting. It says, Dhikr Valley, a heavy topic, and I practice this daily. He's talking about, or she's talking about dhikr, relying on Allah and trusting in Allah. I agree, we must. But Allah also wants us to tie our camel. In other words, He wants us to relate to humans while we rely on Allah. So do them together. Aisha Begum says, Assalamu alaikum to both of you. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Dinspiration. That's an interesting name. What if one spouse shares all that the wife says and does and everyday activities with their family? Is this fine in terms of boundaries or trust. No, it isn't. If one of the spouse, if my wife or I, imagine if I was to tell my mother, my sisters, my brothers, even my children, even at home, or my friends, everything that my wife does, that's a breach of trust. The Arabic word sakina, referring to our marital space, sakina means a home, a protected home, a secure space, a confidential space that is not breached. What happens in your house stays in your house. It should never be broadcast to the world outside. So my mother-in-law should not know about it. My father-in-law should not know about it. My brother-in-law should not know about it. My own siblings should not know about it. It's my home. Is that fair?
Yeah, yes.
I'm looking at you because my thoughts are saying that when it happens, it has a deep impact.
But my question is always, how do we self-reflect and how do we recognize that what is it for me to share and what is it not mine to share? I think that's the really key issues that people don't understand often. Is, for example, we have various issues going on with our children. Some of our children's stories is not for us to share with the world because it's so big that they need to learn, and they will learn when they are ready to share and how they are going to share. Same with the spouse. Some of these things that happen that we do or our spouses do, it's not for us to share, and we need to be really clever about knowing I am okay because I've spoken to my spouse and it's okay. For example, you're buying a house together, you decided you have the house, of course you will share it with the rest of the family. It's something that you decide that it's for you to share because you have done it together, or you ask your spouse, can I say to my family, can I share something with my family? You ask for permission. If you keep doing the sharing without permission, without checking, where you are actually sharing away the things that is not your concern, it's not your business. I know a lot of people, their husband is very successful, run businesses, and the wife started telling everybody about how much the husband earns. It's not for you to share how much your husband is making. It's not for you to share because it's your husband's journey, it's your husband's story, it's his money, it's his work. If he wants to, he might feel really shy about sharing all these things. And I'm just talking about
or
some
maybe
basics.
confidential here, you should not be sharing it.
Or you shouldn't even say how much you have on your account because you bring all sorts of,
envy, jealousy,
everything on yourself. So you bring bad on yourself if you keep sharing the stuff that is not for
Some
you
people
to share.
talk about evil eye. One of the biggest evil is that you don't have boundaries. Forget about evil eyes from the outside. So I woke up this morning and I had stomach pain. I called up my mom and I said, Mom, I'm feeling very upset. My stomach is hurting. That's absolutely fine. It's mine. But I woke up in the morning, picked up my phone, and I started speaking about my wife to my mother. It's none of my mother's business. If she asks, how is your wife doing? Yes, she's doing, alhamdulillah, very well. Or she has heard that my wife is not well, or I want to share that my wife is not feeling well. My wife is okay for me to share. She's not feeling very well, Mum. She's resting today. That's not a problem. But divulging private information about an individual without their consent, whether it is to do with their personal well-being, personal health, physical features, money, family, anything, no. Don't share it with anyone. It's nobody's business. And I really like what you said, which is distinguishing between what you personally can share for your own self and what you collectively share with others must always be differentiated. That distinction is that you can share what is yours without impacting the other person, but you can't share what is collective unless permission is given.
And I think the reason why this is so important is because, we are people of habits. And if we keep sharing the stuff that is not ours to share, we start gossiping about friends, we start gossiping about other people, we make up stories, and it's Chinese whispers, really. It goes out of hand because what we do, if I meet someone who hates the same person I don't like, and we start talking about that person over and over again, I backbite, I gossip, I bring all sorts of things on myself because all I'm doing is sharing the stuff that is not even for me to share.
Yeah. And also not the other person's, because the person you hate is not the other person's problem. And you're projecting your problems of that person, and that person will begin to also have bad impression of that person. What are you going to do about it?
And it's a very toxic bonding experience. And if you look at relationship and in-laws, particularly in-law relationship, it becomes a very big issue because in-laws are beginning to, you start sharing, for example, you don't get along with your mother-in-law, you start sharing it with your friend, your best friend, and you keep talking about over and over again, oh, how I don't get along with. Then she comes with all the stories about, oh yeah, how I don't get along with my mother-in-law, and it's a very toxic environment to be in. Instead of addressing the mother-in-law directly, you are doing what? You
Gossiping.
are leaking information,
Gossiping.
and you engage in an environment which is not giving you the solution. Plus, it's eroding even that little bit of trust you had before.
That is called poison. You're seeping poison in other person's head. Please don't do it. That's why gossiping in Islam is not allowed. That's why slandering and backbiting is haram. Talking about somebody behind their back in negative ways, if it's true, it's backbiting. If it's false, it's slandering. Both are haram. Dean has shared another question. What if one is private and the other isn't? Like we went there and we did this, etc. We argued about this, etc. Well, look, there is an issue here. There are some people in a relationship who are extra protective of the smallest thing in life. So they would not want to share anything with anybody. There are people like that. That's not healthy either. Sharing indicates that you're willing to open up your heart and your door and your home to other people so that they can form a relationship. But how much you share is where we struggle. What you share is where we struggle. So no sharing is not a question. No sharing is not a viable option. We should share together, no doubt about it. But what, how much, what extent, whose information, what information? Remember that distinction. Nasiha Jannah says what?
It's a very different question, but let's look at it. Maybe it relates to trust. Salam, thank you for this talk. How do you get your husband to be more active with kids? How do you get them to be more concerned about akhirah and not just dunya, or they just stick to the basics?
Let's talk about children later. Another discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a different topic, so I don't think it's related. To
Nasiha
trust.
Jannah, it would be wonderful if you obviously watch our program every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. We do this every Sunday morning, alhamdulillah. So make sure you raise it when we are discussing about children. But let's stick to trust. So I gave you 3 signs so far. The 4th sign of lack of trust is that you are suspicious when he receives a text message. His phone pings and you got, oh my God, what's he received now? What's he received now? Or what she received now? That's a problem. Why are you suspicious? Well, brother, he has been behaving suspiciously. He has been concealing. He has been exchanging flirtatious messages with girls or boys, or she has been doing it. Yes, then there is a ground for you, but that's not how you should react, because what you're doing is you're preempting, predicting. Every text message isn't a nail on your coffin, or as we say, on your relationship coffin. It is possibly a message from his mum. It could be a work message. It could be a message about going out with friends for sports. It could be anything. So being suspicious is the problem. And Allah Azza wa Jal says that in the Quran, don't hold suspicion about the other person. It's called dhann. It's called assumption, suspicion. Don't hold it, because suspicion can be mother of all evil. It could really destroy your well-being. What is the impact of suspicion in a relationship? Can you imagine?
It festers in the head, and then you start creating stories one after the other, and without affirming, without actually coming clear about, I have this thing. Can we affirm it's a yes or it's a no? Can we come to a resolution and understand, am I making this up or is this really happening? And this is the first thing that we don't do very often, is that we stick with the assumption and the suspicion, and it just grows into a totally untrue story.
That is the point that was going through my head. Suspicion is like a snowball. A small speck of snow dislodges itself at the top of the mountain.
We don't know snow very much in this country.
Well, people do. I think they do. And what happens by the time it gets to the bottom? That snow rolls down. As it rolls down, it gathers more and more snow around it, becomes bigger as a ball, bigger. Eventually, when the snowball hits the ground, it causes avalanche and destroys homes, humanity, civilization, people, even has records of destroying cities. A snowball can begin an avalanche. And I was thinking that as you were talking, one suspicion can become an avalanche on your relationship. Suspicion is the mother of problems in a relationship. Don't have suspicion. If I'm suspecting you, I should talk to you about it. My dear wife, I need to talk to you. Let's sit down. What is it? I have got a funny feeling that this is what's happening. Can we please have a chat? Can you please tell me if I'm right or wrong? That's okay, because you are creating a space to talk. You're not accusing. Remember, the language is very important. I'd like to talk to you. I've got a sneaky feeling that something is happening. Could you clarify? Instead of, you must talk to me. You're doing this. You're doing that. That's an accusation. A conversation is about sitting down, creating a space to have a conversation. I'd like to talk about something very important. I feel, I am hurt, I am in trouble. That's not the same thing as you are the troublemaker. Can you see? So don't run on suspicion, brothers and sisters. Create the space to talk. Right. We've got so many other points that have come through. AHM says, regrettably, I have gone through a divorce because of this specific thing. There was lack of respect to boundaries, baseless threats to such a degree I couldn't see a future in our 1-year marriage. I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
You should have come to us, AHM, for some counseling, for some support, or gone to anybody else instead of resorted to divorce. I understand maybe that had been your only option, but life is not about that. That's not the only option in life. We can find somebody who can help us. May Allah make it easy for you that you've gone through it. Now, hopefully, you've learned from it. Whoever you wish to get married to next time, just make sure you put it on the table. We need boundaries, agree on boundaries. We need trusting relationship to be able to build our relationship to a different level. Have that conversation and learn from this experience, and don't use this experience to destroy any future potentials. That's okay, right? You can have bad experiences, but learn from it, grow from it.
So I'm just thinking of, we've got a couple of minutes left before we finish.
Actually, no,
today.
we've got for 13 minutes left.
13 minutes, okay. So how do we unpack when someone is at a point when they can't trust? Because we talked about how we build up trust and what we can create as an environment. So our suggestion was to actually, every time there's an assumption, there's a suspicion, pick it up, talk about it, create a space where you don't drop little bits of information as if it's not important, or I just let it go this time. Have a yardstick in your home that when something becomes suspicious, you sit down and you talk. I think that should be the baseline for any home. It's the same with children. You are suspecting something about the kids might be doing something, especially with teenagers. We just don't know where they are and who they are becoming. So we have to leave the channel of communication open by saying, well, I'm feeling something may not be going the way you want it to, or you might be going through something. Do we need to talk about this? So it's really important that we have this communication. But what do we do when people are in a relationship where they literally have just said, I can't trust my husband, I don't want a divorce, we don't trust each other? How do you unpack it? What do we do?
Well, let's look at what's exactly happening. Why are you struggling with that? What is it that your husband or your wife is doing that is causing you to say, I can't trust them? There are two sides to it. There's three sides to it. Number one, you could be the trouble yourself. In fact, you could have a personality issue where you can't trust anybody. I know people who say, I don't trust anybody in this world. That's an issue that you have. Where did it come from? You're not born like that, by the way. Something must have happened. A trauma, an abuse, something happened in your life that caused your brain to generate that pathway that I don't want to trust anybody from now on in my life. The only way I can survive and protect myself is to think of the worst before, because thinking of the worst prepares me adequately. That could have become a habit for you. It could have become a lifestyle for you because you have been traumatized, bad experiences of the past, broken trust by your primary caretakers, your parents, those who you trusted before, right? That could be the reason. So you could be the reason. The other could be your partner's behavior. They could also be suffering the same sequence of events that you have experienced in life. Abuse, trauma, broken trust, mismanagement by the primary caretakers. They could have been doing that, or they could have got into a rut by behaving badly in their previous relationships, or while they were single. It could be all sorts. So that's a second. And the third, it could be external influences, friends, the environment. If your husband is going to a casino, or if you're going to a casino, he's going to or she's going to a bar regularly, it's a problematic space. It's a third party influence. So there are three dimensions to why relationship has no trust. One is you, the other one is your spouse, and the third is external relationships, external experiences. Whatever it is, once you unpack where it is starting from and then start connecting with your spouse from that level, from that very vulnerable level, from that very base level, you're able to bridge that gap. That's how you unpack, and that's how you repack a relationship. It's difficult, and we say don't do it on your own.
I don't think it's people. It's actually not within our own capacity to build trust necessarily. Especially the more complicated the situation is. We are talking about big things, probably being cheated, and
Yes.
these
Infidelity,
are the things,
money,
abuse, financial abuse,
yeah.
mismanagement. These are very big things, and they can literally make your house crumble.
But the other one we have forgotten, which is that previous experiences of abuse and trauma, don't try and deal with it by yourself. Seek professional help. You don't need to come to us if you don't want to. That's okay. We don't mind. But we do recommend getting a counselor, getting a coach to be able to help you deal with it. It's called therapeutic approach. So if you need any help and support from us, do email us info@barefootinstitute.com, info@barefootinstitute.com. You can obviously book in for a counseling session, book in for just a discussion session. You can book in for a talking therapy just to want to chat to somebody. You can book in for coaching. You can book in for mediation. We provide a number of activities. And also you can book if you are getting married, if you want to discuss about premarital conversations, we can help you while you're married, if you're struggling. All aspects of relationship we try and deal with, alhamdulillah. So please do get in touch. We try and make our Muslim families as confident and as comfortable as possible. Don't suffer in silence. That's the bottom line. We've got a point from Deen Spiration who says repeat apologies that doesn't change anything can cause someone to also not trust.
Yes, I love this point, and I tell you why I like this, because I believe that apology is very easy to say, but if it doesn't come with action, it doesn't come with change, these are just empty words. And unfortunately, our Muslim family space is very we know this from, we are not different from any other faith or any other, anyone else, from any people, is that we know that by partially our religious teaching is that we have to apologize and we have to make amends, and after 3 days you're maximum not allowed to speak to someone up to 3 days. But I think we sometimes forget that the sincerity behind those words, if it's not there, if there's no intention of repairing the damage that has been done, it's very easy for someone who cheated you with financial to say, I'm really sorry it happened, and they say it will never happen again, and that if it doesn't follow with action, that actually the person takes it serious and responsible for rectifying the behavior. That's what they say. Trust takes years to build, and it takes one action to break.
Very easy.
And we have to be really careful. We have to communicate this to the person who we don't trust, is that, look, I don't trust you because you have said this many times before. There was no action. There was no action that showed me that you are actually serious about rectifying your wrong behavior.
Absolutely. As a point has just come through from TK, it says, Salam, what do you do if a family member does not wish to go to counseling? However, I feel they need to go, and help them start to deal with what is taking place in their head. Well, that's difficult, isn't it? How do you convince somebody who doesn't want to be helped? It's very difficult, that one. We have come across many people like that in our lives. It's just, I'm afraid it has to be drip feeding them, slowly helping them, convincing them that counseling or therapeutic approach is far better for them. You can't force them, of course. You can only try and convince them by slowly giving them the benefits of it. Share with them the fantastic outcomes of some of the counseling programs people have gone through and benefited from it.
Well, the very fact that people don't want to go is that they don't trust anyone.
Correct.
So it's all really related to the question of trust, and we can't force people to trust. Maybe they have had some counseling before and it didn't work. Maybe they had bad experiences. I mean,
or simply prejudice.
Or just prejudice. They don't know what's going on in a counseling space. But it's a really important part that we don't give up on the principle of counseling or any kind of help. To be honest, it doesn't have to be one or the other type. It's really, people need to be able to choose what works best. Sometimes counseling isn't the right approach. Sometimes it's coaching. Sometimes it's people to
Well,
feel
it
that they
could
are
be
moving
psychiatric,
forward, or it could be psychiatric help. It's literally not giving up on the idea that recommending different programs. Self-development is really the essence of it, and people need to take the shields away from themselves to be able to go into that kind of helping space.
The benefit of therapy is it's like an onion. It's like an onion. If you take an onion, what you see in the outer layer actually isn't the entire onion. Therapeutic approach is you start unpeeling each layer one at a time. So you take the top layer out, next layer out, next layer out, next layer out. It's unpacking layers upon layers of life experiences, good, bad, and the ugly experiences. For who you are, you need to unpack them. If you don't unpack them, right in the core of it is tightly held belief or disbelief, or pain and distress. It's completely packed like an onion. Please try and unpack them. Counseling, coaching, or therapeutic approach helps you to unpack them with somebody who knows how to unpack it, rather than you doing it on your own. My recommendation is don't suffer in silence, please. We've got Jana Hull says, trust is very important part of human being between people, of course, inevitably, and in a relationship. And this is why trust is the cornerstone. But when we say cornerstone, trust is the byproduct of a whole host of activities that we've been talking about. So let's give you some practical examples of what you should do regularly. Every day, try and allocate 5 to 10 minutes or even 20 minutes just to talk. Air your concerns, share your thoughts and your feelings with your spouse. Try and find every day 20 minutes. Not much, 20 minutes. A cup of tea, share it with your wife. Have your children around and talk to them if they need to be if they're concerned. Anyone in a relationship who is with you and live in the same space, make sure you have a regular conversation on a daily basis. What's your suggestion? I've given one.
About trust?
How do they build it?
My suggestion is never let any little thing drop. If something is not working, something is making you suspicious, something is making you uncomfortable, don't drop it. Don't say, oh, it will go away, it will sort itself out. Address it. Be direct, be specific, polite, but request a conversation if something is bothering you, because every conversation is an opportunity to build trust. Every conversation is an opportunity to open up to something what might be possible. And if you are, but I am basing this on if you are 100% sure that you want to keep the relationship with that person. Sometimes we have to say no to some people, and we will say no because our experiences have been so bitter, so difficult, and maybe you need more time to think about how to rebuild that relationship. You don't have to jump straight into it, but if you feel that your spouse who you are living with, we have to have a conversation, then be direct and be polite and be specific about what's bothering you.
And number 3, and this will be the last one from us, be prepared to be vulnerable. Your vulnerability is what would connect you with your spouse. When you're vulnerable with a human being, human beings would share with you their life, their happiness, their sorrow, their joys, and their misery. They will. That's what human beings are. So be prepared to be vulnerable. There is nothing wrong in telling somebody, I'm feeling hurt. Nothing wrong in accepting and admitting that you may have gone through bad experiences in the past. The more vulnerable you are in, of course, a trusting space or confidential space more than anything else, the more likely that you will build trust. Our time is up for today. We're going to have to finish our program, but our program will never end without having the announcement about our books.
If you want to learn about trust a little bit more, I've got some things around trust in my book called Heart Smart, All Neuroscience, How Your Brain Works and How You Can Build More Trust.
Inshallah. And also in my book, if you want to build a relationship of trust, I would recommend that you read the book and you share the thoughts and ideas. And both of these books are available on our website. That's www.barefootinstitute.com/bookstore. And if you want to book counseling, coaching, mediation, nikah, whatever you want to book, as long as it's within relationship realm, please email us info@barefootinstitute.com, info@barefootinstitute.com. Inshallah, we will do our best to get in touch with you as soon as we can, offer you an appointment, and inshallah help you to build a trusting relationship. Until next time.
Next Sunday at 9 o'clock. Assalamu alaikum. Have a good week.
And from me, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.